Hello, Miguel from Grumo here, and I'm going to show you how to build a ticket scanning app using Glide, which means you don't have to code anything, and all starting with a spreadsheet. That's all you need. And then basically, Glide allows you to use your camera and your phone to scan barcodes so you can check, who is coming through the door and basically have a ticket scanning app that you can build in just a few minutes, starting from a Google Sheet or an Airtable base or a CSV file. Then you will have all your tickets on one sheet, and you could have like the ticket number, the type of ticket, and the price. And basically with just this and a little bit of drag and dropping, you could have a fully functional app, not just to scan tickets, but to also sell tickets, right? So the way it works now, let's say that I'm logged in as the administrator, then I have access to the scan tab, where basically I click the scan ticket button, and then that would open the camera app, and then you could scan tickets. And now if you are logging as a user, regular user, then you would only have access to all the available tickets. And then you can click on any specific ticket, and then you could click buy, and then you enter your credit card information and you buy it. And as soon as you buy it, it would appear under your tickets. And here you can see that Alan has purchased 2 tickets. And you can see here the barcode that he could present at the door. And then using the same app, the administrator now here could go and scan the tickets, and you can also see the percentage of tickets that have been already scanned. And the great thing about the scan ticket logic inside the app is that it's going to make sure that nobody can scan twice the same ticket, so people cannot just make random copies of your tickets and sell them or resell them, and then you will have duplicates, right? So once a ticket is scanned, it's going to give an error if you try to scan it again, saying that the ticket was scanned. Now, if you want to reset that ticket, you simply can go as the administrator and reset the ticket if you want to be able to scan it again. Now I'm going to show you how to build this from scratch so you can see how easy it is to build fully functional apps using Glide. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is start a new project inside Glide. Let's click on Create New Project, and now let's give it a name, Ticket App. And you can select whether it's going to be a Glide app or a Glide page. Glide apps are for mobile users specifically, and Glide pages are more like web pages. In this case, we're building a mobile app, so we're going to select Glide app, click Continue, and now you can select a source for your data. Either stay with native Glide tables, Google Sheets, Excel, Airtable, or you can even import Excel file, CSV, or ODS files up to a maximum of 5 megabytes. Now, we have a Google Sheet already, so we could start with Google Sheets, but I recommend to start always with Glide tables because natively it works better, and you can always add another data source after the fact. So I'm going to say create project with Glide tables, and the advantage of doing this is that it's also going to create automatically a user's table, because we're going to need users at least for administrators. So you can see here, if we go to the data editor, we have 3 tables, and it's already created a users table, right? If you start with an Excel sheet or a Google Sheet or an Airtable base right from scratch, and you want to have users, you're going to have to recreate the users table the way it shows up here with a name, email, and photo. You need these 3 columns. But if you start with Glide tables by default, this is already created, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, the next thing we can do is add data sources. We can add now our Google Sheet, right? So here you can add all these different data sources. Our tickets are inside this Google Sheet, and we've created 30 tickets. Of course, you can add as many columns as you want to. In this case, I'm just having the ticket number, the type of ticket, and the price. But you could also have like the location, like the section, row, and seat number if you want it as well, right? And now that we have the Google Sheet created, we're just going to go and import it. Select the file, and in this case is the ticket scan tutorial, and you'll see how that new sheet is added automatically, and it appears as tickets. And you can see here the icon is green, showing that it's coming from Google Sheets. And basically now we've created a copy that is going to be synchronized between Glide and Google Sheets and vice versa. In other words, so if I change anything here, it's going to be changed in Google Sheets as well. And if you want to force synchronization, you can always click on this little arrow here or at the bottom, and that will synchronize any changes that you make. For example, if you add, let's say 100 more tickets, then they will be automatically synchronized in Glide. All right, so what we can do is get rid of the two tables that we don't need that were automatically created by Glide, which is things and categories. Just right click and click delete. And we're going to do the same thing for categories because we only really need users and tickets. The next thing we want to do is generate a unique barcode for each ticket so we can scan it. And to generate barcodes, we can either enter a unique code for each ticket individually, but Glide makes it very easy for us to generate unique codes. All we have to do is use a computed column. Just click the plus button here on the right hand corner and then select row ID and see what's going to happen. Boom. We automatically have generated unique codes for each ticket. And if we go to our Google Sheet, you can see how this new row ID with unique IDs has been added to the Google Sheet as well. Now we can generate a barcode using as the source this row ID. Now the only problem is that this row ID is actually very long and maybe we don't want to have these humongous barcodes. So what I suggest is, keep it short, unless you're going to sell millions of tickets, right? But I mean, if you're going to sell, let's say, a few hundred tickets, you probably only need, let's say, 10 characters. And you can either create a computed column that only grabs the first 10 characters inside Glide, or you can do that using a formula inside Google Sheets. Now, because we're going to be selling the tickets right from the app, I'm going to generate the tickets inside the Google Sheet, and you'll see later why this is required. But right now, we're just going to use a formula, Google Sheet formula, and which is basically going to grab the first 10 characters of the row ID. So let me just copy this formula, and you can just copy it if you want to. And it's called left, and it's going to grab the first 10 characters of all the items in this column, in the row ID column. And that's why we use array formula, so we don't have to copy and paste the formula for as many tickets as we have to. So once I click this, you'll see how we've now generated a ticket code with 10 characters from the first 10 characters of the row ID. And with this, now we can generate our unique barcode for each ticket. We go to our Glide app data editor and click refresh, you'll be able to see how the new ticket code column appears. Now, Glide allows us to create codes or QR codes with a computed column. The problem is that the barcode scanner that comes with Glide doesn't read QR codes as of this moment. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to create QR codes from data using the computed column QR code, right? And it's just going to ask us where the source of the data is. In this case, is going to be the ticket code. And you can see how we just generated a QR code, right? Now we can put that in our app. But our scanner cannot read QR codes, so we need to generate a barcode. And for that, there are several tools that allow you to create or generate barcodes automatically from a sheet or from specific codes. In this case, I'm going to use a free online barcode generator, which is available at barcode.tech-it.com. And you can see here, you can generate all kinds of linear codes. And I'm going to use, in this case, the type of code 128, which allows us to use all kinds of characters, including letters, numbers, and symbols, right? So to show you how it works, I'm just going to grab any specific code here. Let's say the first one. And if I paste it here, you'll see how when I click refresh, it's going to generate a brand new code. Now, the trick is, how do we implement this with our app? Well, luckily this tool comes with an embeddable code that has a URL where all you have to do is basically copy this URL, and then we're going to replace the data variable with our code dynamically using in Glide what is called a template computed column. So the way you do that is, I'm just going to delete the QR code because, well, let's just leave it for now and just call it QR code. And we're going to now create the barcode. So I'm going to call this barcode using a template computed column. And I'm going to enter the template text, which is that URL. But we need to replace this part, which is the code, with what we're going to call, well, code, right? And if I put that in here, now this variable is going to be replaced with whichever column I choose, which in this case is going to be the ticket code. All right. And now we've basically generated the barcodes for all our tickets that easily. I can copy and paste this on our browser, any of these URLs, and you'll see how it's going to generate the corresponding barcode automatically. And we can use the link to this automatically generated barcode image to generate the barcodes inside our app. How cool is that? Great, so now that we've generated the barcodes, the next thing that we need to do is to be able to scan them and to be able to sell them. So let's start with the scanning part, right? So if we go to our app viewer here, we don't have anything. This table doesn't exist anymore because this is the old table. So let's just delete this. And instead of categories, we're going to pull the data from tickets. And now we have all the tickets here, and let's call this tickets. So at least we have a list of all the tickets. But as you can see, the list is not displaying any useful information. So we can click on the component list and make sure the title is something more interesting, like the type. It's a regular and the price. Price. Okay. And maybe we want to make it more like that. Okay. So there you go. These are all the available tickets. Now, if we click on any specific ticket, we can have more information. But we're not going to worry about that right now. What we want to worry about is how we can scan these tickets. So to scan these tickets, we need a new screen that we're going to call scan. And to do that, we're just going to create a dummy table just to store the scanned data. So let me just create another new empty glide table, and we're going to call it scan. And it's only going to have one row. So I'm going to call this, I like to give always all rows at least one unique identifier. So I'm just going to call this scan ID and make it number type. Okay. And I'm just going to call it 1, right? And we're going to store the scanned data inside a temporary column. So for that, we're going to use a user-specific column. That means that the data stored in this column is only safe for the currently logged in user. Okay, so it's not permanently stored in the database because let's say there are several people scanning tickets at different doors. You don't want everybody right into the same column because that will create some conflicts. If you use a user-specific column, that data will only be stored in that user's device, in that specific user's device. So I'm going to call this scanned code, and this is where we're going to be saving the codes that we scan. All right, so with this, we could start scanning codes, but the problem is that we're not checking whether, one, the ticket exists, and second, whether the ticket has been scanned already. We're going to worry about that logic later. Now we're just going to create the basic bare bones scan screen. So for that, we're going to create a new tab, and we're going to grab the data from scan. And in this case, we don't need a list. We should be just a detail. And literally all we really need here, first is just to change the name of that screen to scan and maybe find something like a, there you go, something that looks like a scanning icon. And we need a button. And luckily we have a button called scan barcode button. How amazing is that? Imagine if you try to program a scanning button natively on your app. That will be probably quite difficult. But in Glide, all you have to do is just add that component, and now you can literally start scanning barcodes. In fact, we're going to try that right now with a code that I have from the previous app that I created. So if I try to scan this barcode, you can see me here. Hello, hello, hello. And let me just put this closer to the camera. Let's see if we can pick it up. And it scanned it. So it scanned it, but the data has been saved here under the scanned code. By the way, when you add the button, you have to make sure that you select where you want to store the scanned data, right? So here you can see that scanned data starts with Q-T. And if we go back here to the actual button, you can see that if we can read that, I don't know if you can read that, that's exactly what it read. How cool is that? Now I'm reading this from my computer, but you would be able to do the same thing from your mobile device. So we know the scan button works, great. Now the next thing we need to do is to add the logic to verify, one, that the code exists, and second, that it hasn't been used. So for that, we can go to the scan table, and we're going to add a relation to see if we can find this code inside our tickets table here. It should match one of these codes. Obviously, it's not going to match right now because these are uniquely generated codes that we generated using the row ID and then using the formula here to just grab the first 10 characters. Of course, you can grab all the characters if you want to. The only problem is if you do so, you'll get a very big barcodes that will be harder to read. Just to give you an example, I'm going to copy an entire code here, and you'll see when I refresh, it's going to generate a very long, thin barcode that is going to be harder to read. That's why I just wanted to grab the first 10 characters. That way you have more readable codes, and they're still going to be unique. You're going to have to print literally tens of thousands in order to even get a repeat, okay? So let's go back to the scan table, and we're going to create a relation column. So it's going to be called ticket rel, because we're relating to the ticket table, and we're going to create a relation column where we're going to try to find the scan code inside the tickets table to see if there's any matches under the ticket code, right? And as you can see, there is no matches right now, because if there was a match, we could see that something has been matched there. But what I'm going to do is just to force a match. I'm going to grab any code, the first code from the tickets table, and when I paste it here, you'll see that we in fact found a match, which means this ticket does exist. The first thing we're going to do is add the logic that verifies that this is an actual valid ticket. So for that, we can create another column that is basically just going to look at whether the relation exists is valid. And we're going to call this is valid, and it's going to be an if then else type of computed column where we're going to see if that the ticket relation is not empty, then we're going to give it a 1 as valid and 0 as invalid. When we have this and we scan a ticket, we can use this variable to display a message saying whether it's valid or not valid, right? So we can create a little message here with a just like a, in this case, let's just say a hint, and we can say valid, okay, and then we can just show this when the is a valid variable that we just created equals 1, okay? So as you can see, now we have a valid ticket entered, and if we go to data, if I delete this scan code, nothing appears. If it's valid, it appears. But if, let's say I enter something that is invalid, like this, just a random string, it's not going to give us a valid code. So this is the simplest way to validate a ticket, okay? Let's just go and enter again the valid ticket code. So far, we're only checking whether the ticket is valid or not. But there's actually a lot more that needs to be checked in order for the app to work properly. And when you have several variables to validate content, the best way to figure out how to discern between all the different possibilities is to create a grid. So once you create a grid, you'll be able to see that there are several states that you need to look at. For example, whether the ticket is scanned or not, whether it's valid or not, or whether it has been used or not. Based on that, we can create an if and then statement that is going to give us different validation errors or confirmations. So we can see that the ticket can be either scanned or not. So 0 if it's not scanned, right? And 1 if it's scanned, right? And for valid, the ticket can either be not valid, right? Or valid, right? The same thing. And for used, we can have a not used, and then we can scan it, but if it's not valid, that means it doesn't exist. Therefore, that's going to be always a 0. And then we can see whether the ticket has been used or not, right? So let's say that the ticket is valid but not used, that would be a 0, or the ticket is valid and has been used, in which case we should have an error, and we can see what the different sums are. By the way, if it hasn't been scanned, it's always going to be 0. So there is 3 possibilities of what can happen when the ticket is scanned. It either can be invalid in this case, so if it's 1, that would be invalid. It can be valid, okay? That means that it's valid. It has been scanned, it's valid, and it hasn't been used. Now, if it's valid but it has been used, that should give an error saying used. And in this case, it's just not scanned. And the reason why I'm using for each of the variables either a 0 or 1 is because then I can add them up, and then I'll have unique numbers that I can use to discern between the 4 different states. We can go back to the app and add these variables in the scan table. So we already added the is valid, so we can duplicate this to add the whether is scanned. And we're going to check whether the scan code is not empty. If it's not empty, that means that it has been scanned. That means it's a 1. If it's empty, it's going to be a 0. The next one is going to be whether it's used or not. Now, how do we know if it's used or not? At this moment, we don't have any indicator whether a ticket has been used or not. So we would need to add a new column to mark tickets as used. And so I can add a new column, and you can either use a binary code or a Boolean type of column, but I like to use, in this case, a date column, which I'm going to call scan date, and it's going to be date type of column. That way I know when the ticket was scanned also, not just whether it was scanned or not, but when was it scanned. And if it was already scanned, then we know that it has been already used. So now we can check for that under the scan table. The problem is that we're not pulling that data from the tickets table right now. So we have to use a lookup computed column in order to retrieve the scan column from the tickets table. So I'm going to use a lookup column. I'm going to use our ticket relation and then grab the scan and date. Okay. With this, I can check for the third condition, which is whether it has been used or not. So I'm going to duplicate that condition. I'm going to call it is used. Okay. So if the scan date is not empty, that means that it's been scanned, and therefore it has been used. All right. Perfect. In this case, this code specifically, it hasn't been scanned, or actually none of the codes have been scanned, right? So another thing that we have to do later is once a ticket is scanned, we need to update that ticket row and add the scan date so we can verify later on whether a ticket has been scanned or not. But for now, we can add a math column where we're going to add these values as we did on the spreadsheet. So I usually call this, you can call this scan math, right? And we're just going to add the 3 different variables, A plus B plus C, where A is going to be is valid, B is going to be is scanned, and C is going to be is used. With precision 1, no need for a group separator. And in this case, we have 2. But again, we know that the possibilities are either 0, 1, 2, and 3. And the messages that we should get are either not scanned, invalid, valid, or used. The not scan is not really necessary because by default it's always going to be not scan. What we need to for sure have is the other three: invalid, valid, and used. So now we can create a conditional column where we can say that, well, error message if you want to, and it's going to look at the value of the scan math, right? And if it equals 1, that means that it was invalid. And I also like to put like little indicators, color indicators, right? That helps us. If it was 2, I think that was valid, so we can put a color indicator green, saying that it's valid. And if it's used, that is going to be, the scan math is going to be equal 3, and we can use, in this case, well, an orange indicator saying already scanned. Okay, boom, bada bing, bam, boom. And in this case, it's valid, and we can actually pull that message if we want as the title of our hint, right? But we can just insert a text component that is only going to show when there is some type of message to be shown. So let me just add a text component here, and we're going to center it and make it a headline 2, and it's going to grab the error message, and in this case it's saying that is valid. Okay, perfectus. And now we're going to have all the different possibilities already taken care of. For example, we can change this, delete it, so nothing should appear. We can enter it's valid, and we can just enter something wrong, and it's invalid. And if there was a scan date here, then it would show that it's already used. So in fact, if we go to that ticket, I think that's the first ticket, and we can enter any date here. And now we go to the message. You can see how it's showing already scanned. How cool is that? I love logic. This is looking really good right now. We could start scanning barcodes and checking whether they're being used or not and whether they're valid or not. But we're missing something, which is how do we mark them as scanned? We need to add that date to the ticket table here under the scan date every time we scan it. Now, we cannot add the date automatically as we scan something. So we're going to have to add a second button to confirm the ticket. And once we confirm the ticket, we can create a custom action that adds the date to the scanned ticket. So let's just add a button here. And we're going to call this button confirm. Okay. And when we confirm the ticket, we're going to create a custom action here under configure action, create new action. We're going to call this confirm. Okay. And here we're going to do 3 things. The most important thing is we're going to set the column values of the ticket that we found. We're going to add the current date and time. That's the way we're going to mark the ticket as scanned. The next thing we're going to do is to delete the value that we just scanned from this table. In this case, the scan table, the scan code, we're just going to clear the value because it's already been scanned and marked as used. And the last thing we're going to do is just have a confirmation message or notification, a positive one. You can have success or failure. In this case, it's success. We're going to say just done. Okay, and we're going to save this. And this should only be shown when we find a valid ticket, not when we get any other kinds of errors. Now, when we go to our validation logic, remember that only when the sum of the 3 different variables is 2, we get a valid ticket. And that's the only time that we would confirm that the ticket is valid. Right? So we have to go back to the app and then make sure that we only show this confirm button. So we can go to the bottom options and under visibility, make sure that the math has to be, so equals 2, right? So now if I enter a valid ticket, let me just go and find a valid ticket, this ticket, for example, that has not been scanned. I'm going to copy and paste that under the scanned area. And now you can see that is showing, the confirm button shows when we found a valid ticket. But we're still seeing the scanned button. We don't need that because we need to confirm this ticket before we can scan another ticket. So we're only going to show the scan barcode whenever the scan math is not 2, doesn't equal 2. All right, and there you go. For any other type of situation, it's going to show the scan barcode. For example, if I enter an invalid ticket, it's going to still show that. And if it was used, it still would show the scan barcode button because we would need to rescan the same ticket or scan a new ticket until we get a valid ticket. Now let me enter a valid ticket because what we are going to add as well is a cancel button. You always want to be able to get away from whatever screen you are. So let me just add another button here, and we're going to make a different color and just going to say cancel. And it's only going to be shown again when the scan math is equal to, which means that we found a valid ticket. And for the action here, we're going to have a simple action, which is going to be clearing. So we're just going to set, let me just select set this item, and we're just going to clear the scan code. We're going to clear the scan code. So that will basically remove the message. And we're going back to the scan screen without any messages. Great, so we're almost done with the scan screen. There are a couple of interface components that are optional to add. One of it is the percentage of tickets that are available or sold that have been already scanned. So we have an idea of how many people are already coming or how full is the venue that we're filling up. And the second one is to have a list of the already scanned tickets. So we can have a history of all the tickets that we have scanned. And that's very easy to do because we can add an inline list, right? And we can grab the data from the tickets and basically just show the tickets. So we can add a filter. We're only going to show the tickets that have a scan date that is not empty. And as you can see, we already found one here. And all we need to do now is just change how that looks like. So we can grab, make it like that, and maybe have the price if we want to here. So it's a regular ticket, VIP, or maybe have the actual code there if we want to under details, right? Not that barcode, but this ticket code. And the next thing we will have to do, which we haven't done for the actual tickets, is to decide what's going to be seen on the screen once we click on a ticket, right? Like what kind of details that we want to show. And for that, we can add a table component. And now we can add whichever data is available for us to look at. So for example, the type, the price, the scan date, and whether, maybe if we want to show whether it has been sold or not. So that will be another variable that we're going to add. Once we allow users to buy tickets, we want to mark them as sold as well. One thing is whether they're scanned or not. The other thing is whether they're available or not for people to purchase. And for that, we're going to have to add another column under the tickets table to see if it has been sold or not. But we're going to do that after we finish this screen. One thing we want to do is reset the ticket. Let's say that we scanned it by mistake and we want to mark it as not scanned. Then we can add a button here to reset the actual ticket, right? And that's all that's going to do is simply delete the date and make it available again. So we can just create a new action, custom action, and what we're going to do is simply clear from this item the scan date, just clear the value, and then we're going to go back, and then a notification saying it has been done. And this is a way to clear a ticket if we want to be able to scan it again. All right. So if we do that, then we can simply, maybe we want to add the code as well here. Let me just add the actual ticket code. There you go. If we want to move that up, that's another way. Okay, so that ticket specifically, we can reset it because it's already being scanned, right? And then it would disappear from the list of scanned tickets. The second interface component that we wanted to add, and is optional as well, is a progress bar showing how many tickets have been scanned out of all the available tickets. And for that, it's very easy. We all need to do is add another component called progress bar, and we can add this to the top of the screen, and we can decide how it's going to look. Let's say half a circle, and now we're going to have at least one column, which is going to be a sum of all the tickets I have in scan, another column which is going to be the total available tickets, and for that we have to use what they call in Glide a roll-up column. So we're going to use two roll-up columns, one to count all the available tickets. So I'm going to add a new column called tickets count, and I'm going to say roll-up, right? And basically I'm going to sum all the tickets here, right? So count all the tickets, and there is 30 tickets right now. And then the next thing I need to do is to count how many tickets have a date on them. In other words, have been scanned. So for that, there's the simplest way is to simply basically duplicate the roll-up column. And then what we're going to do is call this ticket used count, for example. And we're going to count, instead of the row ID, it's going to be the scan date. And right now, we're just going to count it, and there should be 0. But let's see if I add a scan date here. Then if we go back to the scan table, there should be a 1 there. And also if we go to our app, you can see that has been added to the scan list, and now we have a 1%, but this is not correct because it's not grabbing the data that we wanted. We have to grab the data of the progress here as the ticket use count, and then the maximum, which is the total available tickets, is going to be the ticket count. So now we have one ticket which represents 3% of all the available tickets. We don't need the title, we can have that there. And then as we're scanning tickets, we can see how far we are in the scanning process. Let's test this scanning screen, all the logic, real quickly. Let me just grab another available ticket. Again, when you scan a ticket using your phone's camera, it's basically going to recognize whichever code is in the barcode of the ticket that's being scanned, and it's going to add it to the scan code column. And then with that, we're going to generate the logic that we were looking for. So we can cancel it, or we can confirm it. If we confirm it, you can see how it's been added to the list. Right now, if we enter again, it's already scanned. If we enter an invalid one, it's going to be invalid. But what I was going to say, you may want to have the most recently scanned ticket on top. And for that, we can go to options, and instead of showing them by sheet order, we're gonna show them by scan date, but from most recent to least recent. And there you go. Let's try another ticket for fun. Let me just grab a different ticket here, and we're gonna go to data, pretend that it has been scanned, and confirm it. Perfect. Now we have 3 tickets. That's 3%. Obviously, 3 out of 30 is 10%. And you can see that our app is scanning tickets fantastically well. So we've done a lot of the hard work already to have a fully functional ticket scanning app. Now, if we want to be able to sell tickets through our app, that's a whole different app, which could be a standalone app. But in this case, if we want to have those two functionalities in the same app, we can do that. And for that, we can go to our tickets. These are all the available tickets. And then we would be able to click on a ticket, and there should be a buy button here. And then we would be able to buy the ticket, mark it as bought, and then there should be a way for us to retrieve those tickets by logging in probably with the email address that we used to purchase the ticket, so we can present our app with the barcode of the ticket, so the ticket can be scanned with the same app. And also, if we want to print the ticket with the barcode, and we can present that as well and use the same app to validate the ticket. So we're going to do that next. All right, so let's add those buy buttons for our tickets. So let's just click on any ticket, and we can just go to a screen plus and just type buy and then add your buy button. And you need to be connected to Stripe to use the Stripe integration that comes with Glide. Now, you could also use other payment processors, but that would mean you have to create a custom button that points to, let's say, PayPal or other payment processor. And then you will have to connect PayPal to Glide using Zapier or their API. And to use Glide's API, you need to upgrade to have a pro account in order to be able to write back to the database. So if you want to just test the app, I recommend that you use the existing Stripe integration. That means that you have to open a Stripe account first, and then you can connect to where it says here, service. Once you do that, you'll be able to add buy buttons right in your app, right? And so then you have to select the details, the product info. So let's say we want to have as the name, the ticket type, the description, maybe the code, because we don't have any description right now on the table. So just the ticket code. The image could be the QR code that we generated. It could be any other image that you add to the database. The product ID, we're going to use also the ticket code in this case. The price is the price. Currency US dollars, and we don't need a shipping address, so we're just going to do that. So we're just going to uncheck require shipping address, and we're going to display the Stripe logo below the button here to give it more credibility, to make sure people feel safe when purchasing through our app. Now, when you click on the buy button, you'll be able to see the payment screen where people can enter their credit card number and basically make a purchase. Now, when you are editing the app inside the Glide app editor, you can perform test purchases using Stripe's test credit cards, which you can find by just typing Stripe test cards, and then you can copy any of them and enter them in the Glide app payment screen. And then enter any date in the future, any security code, and any zip code, and then you can enter the name and email address of the person, and then you can place the order. And what's going to happen is that the order is going to be processed. Obviously, nothing is going to be charged because we're using the test Stripe card, but what happens and this only happens when you're using Google Sheets. It doesn't happen when you're using Excel or Airtables, or even if you're just using only Glide tables. It's just a limitation of Glide at this moment. What happens is that the sale has been recorded in the Google Sheet, not on the Glide table. You see, there is no other tables here showing any record of sales. But funny enough, there is a record of the sale under the Google Sheet that we attached to this app, and it's called App Sales. As you can see, there's a new table automatically generated as soon as a test purchase has been performed. We can pull this data into our Glide database to verify whether a ticket has been sold or not. And this is a little bit tricky to do because, as you can see, we're not seeing the sales table. This table is not there. So the trick is you have to create a new table. You can call it anything you want to, but I would call it sales. And then you have to pull all the data inside the app sales table that has been automatically generated by Glide. Okay, and you have to pull that using a little formula, which I'm going to show you right here, and you just can look at it. But basically, it's a filter formula that pulls all the data inside the app sales table and brings it to the sales table. Now, once we've duplicated this table, guess what happens? We're going to refresh the database, and you'll see how the sales table appears. Now, because it has appeared here, now we can verify using the code whether that ticket has been purchased or not. Because we can go to the tickets table And we can relate the ticket column to the item SKU column. And if there is a match, that means the ticket was sold. So let's do that. Let's just add a new column. And it's going to be sales rel, because it's a relation column pointing to the sales table that we just created. And it's going to be a relation column. We're going to grab the ticket code and try to find a match under the item SKU there. Now, if there is a match, that means that there was a sale. And guess what? There is a match right there, which means that ticket, the one starting by B5K, we can see here B5K, that in fact has been sold. Because we have this as a reference that it's been sold, we can have a little message showing that it's been sold. So the first thing we're going to do is create a conditional column and just call it is sold. And it's going to be an if then else column where we're going to check whether the sales relation is not empty, which means it's been sold. And then we're going to assign a 1 if it's been sold and a 0 and it hasn't been sold. And then we can add another conditional column, which we're going to just add a message here, which is going to be sold status and conditional column. And if it's sold equals 1, we're going to say it's been sold. And if it hasn't been sold, well, that means that the ticket is available. All right, so we have the little message. We can also pull, for example, what's the user's email address that has been sold to. So we can say sold to, and basically just grab that email address from the user that has purchased it. So we can go to sales rel and purchaser email. So we have that as well. And now we can go back to our tickets and add a new row to this table, grabbing the sold status, right? It's a simple way of showing what's the status of each ticket. Now, because now we know which tickets have been sold, we don't want to have the sold tickets available for purchase. So we need to add a filter to our list of tickets. So we select the list component and then go to options. And then we're going to add a filter, which we're going to say, do not show or show only tickets where is sold is equals 0. In other words, they haven't been sold. That way, people will only be able to buy tickets that are available. But we have a little problem right now. People can buy tickets, but they cannot retrieve the ticket to print it, right? There's no code here to print. Obviously, you don't want to give away the codes so people can print them. In fact, we probably want to remove the ticket code because they could generate the actual barcode using the code, right? So we're going to remove that, but we need for this user, Alan, now that he has purchased a ticket, to be able to retrieve it. So we need to create another screen. We're going to create another screen, and it's going to be called a profile, okay? And it's going to grab data from users, and we're going to just change the icon to, let's say, a little smiley face. Okay. And now we want to make sure that we're only showing the currently logged in user. So we go to details. Now there's a way to enforce this for security reasons. Is if you enforce under the email column of the users table, you make sure that you enable row owner. That means only the currently logged in user can access only his or her data. If I remove this, see what happens. If I go to the list view, now we can see all users. Now, if I enforce row owner feature, that means only the data associated to that user can be seen. So this is a good thing to enforce for security reasons. Now, if you want the administrator to be able to access all the users' data, obviously, if the administrator has access to the Glide app editor, always can go to the database and modify anything that is required. Or you can add another row owner column where you enter the email of the administrator. But now let's just finish the profile page for this user. So then we can go to details, and let me just change that little bit of the user interface here. I don't know if we have a photo for this user. Doesn't seem to be a photo, but I mean, you can always add a photo if you want it really quickly. Go to a stock image and then say man, and there's a few options here that we can choose from, right? Let's just choose this guy, and now we have a little image. We can have the email if you want there or not. Not necessary. We can have it under the picture details, for example. But the most important thing is that we want to list the purchases of this user. So he or she can retrieve the tickets that they purchased. So we need to go to the users table, and then we have to create a relation, right? Which is tickets rel. And we're going to point that to the sales table because that's where all the tickets are. And basically we're going to say this is a relation where we're going to match the email of the user with the email of the purchaser under the sales table. And if there's any matches, then because a user can buy multiple tickets, it should be a match multiple type of relation, right? And once we have that, we'll be able to list all the purchases by adding an inline list that uses the relation that we just created. So by default, it's already grabbing the relation here under the source for data. And we just can call it tickets. And you can see here we have that. For the image, there's no image for in the sales table. And we can just change what is shown here. So test purchase, I don't know what we call this, caption. Let me just... well, the name, because the name is obviously the name of the person, maybe the item SKU, and maybe the price if we want to. I mean, this is up to you how you want to display this, right? There you go, and that's the ticket. Now the problem is that this ticket is pointing to the sales table. The sales table, that's true, it doesn't have the barcode, because we generated the barcodes on the tickets table. So we can do two things. Either grab the existing barcode here, this column, and just grab it and pull it into the sales table, or we can again generate the barcode here. I think for safety reasons, we may as well only generate barcodes for tickets that have been sold. So actually, I think that's a better idea. Now, usually when you're building an app, you have to think of security and ways to avoid for people to basically cheat the system. So right now, all the tickets already have the barcode. And the barcode is all that people need in order to basically enter the venue or the event that you're selling tickets for. So in this case, what I'm going to do is copy this. And I actually can delete this. I'm just going to delete this barcode here. Because what I'm going to do is only have the barcode created here, right? And I'm going to use a template column, and again the code is going to be the item SKU. All right, so there you go. Now we have the barcode here. The barcode is a link to an image. So when somebody clicks on their ticket, we can actually, well, we can display whatever we want to, but let's just quickly add an image that is going to point to the barcode, which is right here. And that should pull in the barcode, but it's not fitting properly. So we want to just insert it with the content. And this user could now open their app, log in as themselves, and then see a list of all his or her tickets, in this case his tickets. And then we, with the same app as the administrators, could scan this and verify whether the ticket is valid or not. How cool is that? Now, the final thing we need to do before we publish this app is to differentiate between just visitors or buyers and the administrator, who is the person or persons that can scan tickets or basically modify content. And for that, we need to create roles. We need to decide who is an administrator and who isn't an administrator. And it's quite easy to do that. Basically, you have to go to the users table and create a new column, and I call that role. And then you can just enter, for example, admin for whoever is an administrator. And whoever matches this string, in this case, the admin value, then he or she will be able to access specific content. For example, the first thing we don't want anybody to access is the scan tab. So if we go to the scan tab, we should go to options, and then under visibility, we should make sure that the role is admin, right? So that means now this user, Alan, doesn't have access to it, but me, I should have access to that screen. But if we log in as anybody else that is not an administrator, they lose access to that tab. There's another thing that needs to be removed for regular users. I'm looking at regular, that's a regular type of ticket, but regular users, which is the reset button. And the reset button is only available for administrators. So the same thing I'm going to do here is go to under visibility, and then under role, I'm going to make sure that the role is admin and only administrators. So if I log in as somebody else, then they cannot see that. And that's pretty much it, right? And if I log in as a user that has purchased tickets, we can see them here. And then if I want to scan stuff, I should log in as an administrator. And that has all the functionality that we wanted to. We can purchase tickets and we can scan them all from the same app. The next step is to publish the app and then distribute this app. So in Glide, this is very easy to do. All you have to do is, well, before you do that, maybe you want to change the colors. It's up to you. So if we go to the settings tab, you can change the name of the app, author Grumo, and then you can give it some title like ticket scanning app. Then we can change the logo, maybe find a ticket there, or upload an image if we want to. We can change the appearance to give it a different color if we want to as well. Make it, let's say, like darker blue. And now when things are looking the way we want to. Oh, another thing is the privacy, very important. Who can access the app? So do we want people to always have to log in order to access the app? Obviously, administrators will have to do so. But what about anybody that wants to buy stuff? So we're going to say just public for now. And we're also going to allow people to sign in with Google, specifically administrators, because it just makes it easier. And if you want to add any other type of limitation, you can have private sign in. But a lot of these options you need to upgrade if you want to test them. Okay. So once we've done that, we can hit the publish button, publish the app, and it's going to generate a URL or a link to the app automatically. But you also can enter something like whatever you want, app, and that is taken. You see that a lot of the names are already taken. Maybe my ticket app. And that one is available. And right now we can copy this and distribute the access to the app. Basically, we can go to the app right now if we want to. We can open it in our browser, and we should be able to access the app from any mobile device or from your desktop as well. So let me just make this a little bit bigger. And you see how it's noticing that my desktop is in dark mode. I can always change that if you want to always keep it in whichever kind of mode that I want to. But the app is here, available for anybody in the world, including you right now. You can go to myticketapp.glideapp.io. If you want your custom URL, you will have to upgrade as well in order to be able to have your specific domain name if you want one. But right now it's available at this address, and people could definitely actually buy because once you access the public app, then the Stripe processing system is actually working, is live, and this would go to my Stripe account. So please don't use this right now because then I will have to refund you. But yeah, it's fully working. And then if you log in as a user that has purchased something, you will be able to see it. You will have to sign in with the email address that you used in order to purchase, and then you will be able to see a list of your tickets. Now, something that can be done here is if I sign in, let me just type Miguel here. Because I am an administrator, I'm going to sign in with Google. You'll be able to see that I already have access to the scan screen. I also have access to the details of all the tickets, and I have a profile screen. So this is a fully functional ticketing app which was built absolutely with zero coding using Glide. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to see more tutorials like this, well, just subscribe to this channel. And also, if you want to learn how to build apps without coding using Glide, check out my really in-depth course in how to build Glide apps without coding at grumo.com/go-glide, where I cover absolutely everything you would ever want to know in order to become really proficient at building really compelling apps like this one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.